Stopping and talking to you, and it's kind of a bit like live radio, and it's kind of a bit like theatre, and it's kind of a bit like a music gig. It started in spring 2020 when I was sort of rediscovering kind of my passion for birds, because we were looking after family in the middle of nowhere and spending all of our time outside. And I'll tell you a bit more about that. I'd like to introduce you to two of the people I reached out to at that point. This is Mark Cocker and Linda O'Keefe.
Hello, my name is Mark Cocker. I'm a lifelong naturalist and an author of 13 books. And I've recently completed a book called One Midsummer's Day, which is an exploration of swifts and their relationship, or the way in which they show the unity of all life on Earth.
Hi, my name is Linda O'Keefe, and I'm a sound artist and acoustic ecologist, and I've recently completed an art project called Gaia, which is looking at the ethics of gene editing for climate adaptation.
Choose selecting from obviously thousands of species of birds which migrate, but I selected three for reasons which will become apparent. But the first one was the bar-tailed godwit, which is a small mud-brown wader of about a kilo in weight, sometimes as little as half a kilo, which I'll explain, and the willow warbler, which is one of the most numerous migrants across the entirety of the northern hemisphere, with the exception of North America. A bird that weighs about 12 grams and breeds, hopefully still, in the slopes above HEBDEN Bridge. And the third migrant is a bird that I know is flying over this church to celebrate our music also, is a bird called the common swift, which creates these extraordinary world-wrapping journeys from Africa across the whole of Europe and Asia.
So originally, our sounding environment was divided into two distinct forms of sound production. You had the geophony, which is the sound of thunder, earthquakes, waves, wind through trees, essentially the voice of our planet speaking through sound. Then you have the biophony. So these are the sounds of all living creatures. from insects to birds to fish to humans, sounds that we produce under the water, in the soil and in the air. Most recently, Bernie Krause, kind of famed acoustic ecologist, developed the term the anthrophony, and these are the sounds that humans have produced. It's not our voices, it's the sounds of things that we've created, technology, industry. At the moment, we're considered to be in this unofficial period called the Anthropocene. In the Anthropocene, all human activity is seen to have a significant impact on both the climate and all ecosystems, and all of the sounds within all of those spaces.
Now might be a nice moment just to explain while Delia plays that we were trying to find sounds for the series that would help us illustrate these ideas about soundscape ecology. So for geophony, you'll hear Delia playing on the skin of the drums, using brushes and things. And for biophony, you'll hear wooden sounds and striking things like birdsong. And we're using a lot of metal sound with anthrophony.
So in 2007, I was living in Chicago. I was apprenticed to a sound artist over there, developing my practice. And I first started living on the north side of Chicago, sorry, the south side of Chicago. A predominantly African-American community located in this space. And while I was there, I noticed a particularly distinctive sounding environment. And this is the soundscape of racialization and class segregation. And this emerged in how that side of the city was constructed. Large roadways, poorly built housing complex, no green spaces, massing communities in small spaces, and this in fact was intentional segregation. The north and the south side of the city were divided by a motorway. The north side of the city was predominantly white, upper middle class, small housing, narrow streets, boulevards of trees, and lots of green park spaces. The soundscape was basically community, nature, quiet. And I remember thinking, okay, this is the soundscape of segregation. Pieced it all together later. We'll do a little bit of that for you now. So the term soundscape ecology emerged in the 1960s with the founding of the Vancouver Soundscape Project, which was co-created by Murray Schafer and Hildegard Westerkamp. both composers, artists, and people who were concerned with our soundscape. And they were very concerned about the encroaching human presence of sounds from the man-made environment into the natural and even urban landscape. And they start measuring and documenting the level of sounds in these different spaces, as well as collecting information from people, from groups. And that formed the World Soundscape Project, which actually took this research around the globe. They went to different locales around the world doing the same thing, measuring sound levels of technology produced by humans and how much it was encroaching into either rural, natural, or urban landscapes. And they measured this as a kind of a level of decibel and started to classify these man-made sounds as noise. In 2007, I began listening to this region in Spain, the Terra Alta region. This was kind of a rural agricultural community in a kind of very remote mountain area. And I started listening to the different soundscapes of that space, including the annual festivals, cultural events, particularly their Festival of Sixteens, a coming of age festival where you had the sounds of fireworks, percussion, young voices until the wee hours in the morning. And then I was also listening to the sounds of the landscape, crickets, insects, birds, and also the sounds of agricultural practices when they started, when they ended. In 2008, I began to see and hear the sounds of wind turbines coming into this mountainous region. These gigantic metal monoliths produce this quite beautiful whirring sound in the landscape. But also those rural communities were getting subsidies from the Spanish government to allow these turbines onto the landscape, badly needed for these rural communities. However, over a period of 10 years, the landscape of the Terra Alta region became covered in these now quite loud metal monoliths. It became harder to hear the biophony and the geophony. I noticed also a silencing of the community. Most of the traditional farmland were now wind farms. So the sounds of tractors, farmhands, the kind of cyclical measure that you hear in an agricultural community was missing. And young people left to go to the cities for work. There was no more work on the land. So the festivals became much smaller, much quieter. And that symbiotic natural and social ecosystem and soundscape that had evolved over several hundred years was disappearing. So the landscape was both becoming silenced and noisy in an effort to provide energy for the cities. So one of the processes I've developed as part of my practice is known as sound mapping, and this usually follows a sound walk, so a walk through a landscape where you're paying attention and listening to the sounding environment. And so a sound map is a way of transcribing the sounds that you hear on your journey. You can do this two-dimensionally: pen, paper, coloring markers, paints. And what you're trying to do is map the sounds of not only a place, but your experience of that place. You're trying to capture both the ephemeral and the cyclical of these sounds, and basically route and map that sonic journey. In 2017, I was working with a group of young teenage girls in Nottingham, and I was walking them through both the known and unknown of the city that they lived in. And they were listening to their came back and I introduced them to the idea of creating their own sound maps. Now I said they could map the sound of the journey that we did, or they could map a personal experience or event and create this as a sound map and maybe we perform it afterwards. One young woman decided to create a sound map of the birth of her niece, which she had experienced. So she created this amazing, powerful sound map using bold colours and lines and words and text. And we all looked at it and we immediately knew, yes, this was the sound map of birth. Over tens of thousands of years, species have evolved to coexist by communicating at different ranges in the spectral frequency. And over the period of just 100 years, we've lost thousands of communicating species. They don't exist anymore. They're no longer part of the soundscape. We can only mimic a blackbird, crow, thrush, and sparrow. But imitation is not understanding. So we have to observe, pay attention, and realize that every sound has a purpose. It's linked, weaved, braided, both to the environment and to us. One sound of many, all in concert. We don't need to intervene or even understand. Step back and listen, and perhaps gently realize you're only one sound amongst many. And if we lose a sound, it's too late. We can't bring it back.
So this is sort of where this project comes to an edge. It doesn't really have a neat finish. It feels like it sort of asks a lot more questions really than I set out to ask about the ecosystems that we all rely on. You know, they might be emotional, they might be physical, they might be your community. I think what this project has sort of like certainly left with me is this feeling that they're fragile and they're interconnected and we must look after them. For me, one of the ways of doing that is through music because it feels like a very sort of borderless medium. I can try and get across some ideas that I haven't got the words for. But birds really do connect the whole world in a wing beat. And the soundscape, the world's soundscape is a shared space, it's all of ours, and so we have to look after it. Otherwise these connections, we're losing them. Our daughter, Agnes, is now 2 years old, and she started to sing and tell us who she is. If you're waiting to see a change, it's too late already. Thank you for being with us and